Thanksgiving had always been a sacred tradition in my family. Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Cambridge, England, my parents, Edward and Margaret Williams, made it clear that family meals weren't just about food. They were about loyalty, presence, and belonging. Every year, without fail, we gathered at our family estate in Sussex, a massive countryside house that smelled of roasted turkey, cinnamon pies, and crackling fireplace logs. It was our one guaranteed reunion, no matter how busy life got. But this year things were different. I was sitting in my London apartment one chilly November evening when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. I expected it to be the usual. A list of things I was to bring for dinner, or perhaps a reminder not to be late. Instead, the message read, "James, your father and I have decided to keep Thanksgiving simple this year. We need some space. Best if you skip this one." I read the words 3 times. Skip Thanksgiving? Me? The very son who never missed a single one? My chest tightened as confusion gave way to anger. What kind of parents tell their only child to skip the one day meant for family? I called immediately. My father answered, his voice calm but distant. "Dad, what is this about? You don't want me home for Thanksgiving." "James," he sighed. "Your mother and I just feel this year should be quieter. We need some space. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You're literally telling me I don't belong at my own family's Thanksgiving." "Don't be dramatic," he said coldly. "We'll celebrate again next year." Next year? As if I were some optional guest in my own family. I hung up, staring at the city lights outside my window. My parents had always been distant, favoring appearances over emotions, but this was a new low. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was about being pushed aside, discarded, as though I didn't matter. At first, I tried to swallow the pain. Maybe they really needed time alone. Maybe I had done something wrong. But the more I thought about it, the more betrayal burned inside me. And then 2 days later, I found out the truth. Scrolling through social media, I saw a photo that made my blood boil. There they were, my parents, smiling broadly at a beautifully set Thanksgiving table, surrounded by guests. Not strangers, but family. My cousin Amelia, her husband, even my estranged uncle who lived in Manchester. Everyone except me. They hadn't wanted space. They had wanted a Thanksgiving without me. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt, I was enraged. For years, I had been the dutiful son, attending every gathering, making them proud, biting my tongue at their constant criticisms. And now, they discarded me like I was nothing. Fine. If they wanted a Thanksgiving without me, they would learn just how much they had underestimated me. I decided then and there, I would celebrate without them. Not quietly, not alone, but in a way that would make them regret ever excluding me. The idea of revenge started small. Maybe I'd throw my own Thanksgiving dinner and post the photos online, just to show them I didn't need them. But the more I thought about it, the more elaborate my plan became. Why stop at just a dinner? Why not create a celebration so grand, so unforgettable, that it would eclipse their Thanksgiving completely? And I knew exactly how to do it. You see, while my parents valued appearances, they also thrived on reputation. In their social circle, image was everything. My father, a retired barrister, was respected in high society. My mother, the perfect hostess, prided herself on throwing the best events. They loved being admired for their traditions, their family unity, their perfect Thanksgivings. So what better revenge than to outshine them? To throw the Thanksgiving of the year, with their family, their friends, even their neighbors, all flocking to me instead of them? I called Amelia, my cousin. She answered cheerfully. "James. Long time no see." "Amelia," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "How was Thanksgiving at my parents'?" There was a pause. "Oh, James, I didn't know you weren't invited. I thought you were busy." "Busy?" I laughed bitterly. "No. They told me to skip it." Her gasp was genuine. "What? Why would they do that?" "Good question," I muttered. "But tell me, how would you feel about celebrating again? This time at my place?" Amelia hesitated only for a second before agreeing. And just like that, my plan was set in motion. I wasn't going to just host a dinner. I was going to host a spectacle. I rented out a grand hall in Kensington, the kind usually reserved for weddings and galas. I hired a Michelin-starred chef to craft the menu. Turkey roasted to perfection. Pumpkin pies that melted in your mouth. Wine imported from France. Live music, a string quartet. Everything my parents pretended to value, I would execute flawlessly. But the piece de resistance? I invited everyone they knew. Cousins, uncles, old family friends. Even their closest neighbors. And I made sure word got back to my parents. Sure enough, 2 days before the event, I received a call from my mother. "James," she said, her voice tight. "We've heard rumors that you're planning some sort of Thanksgiving party?" "Not a party," I corrected. "A Thanksgiving celebration." "Why?" she asked sharply. "Because," I said slowly, savoring each word, "I learned I could celebrate without you." There was silence on the other end. Then she spoke, her tone dripping with disapproval. "You're being childish. Thanksgiving is about family." I laughed coldly. Funny. That's exactly what I thought, until my family told me to skip it. I hung up before she could respond. The night of my Thanksgiving arrived. The hall was breathtaking, lit with golden chandeliers and decorated with autumn leaves and candles. Guests filled the room, their chatter blending with the soft music. Laughter, warmth, and joy filled the air. Everything my parents had tried to deny me. As I raised my glass for a toast, I couldn't help but smile. "To family," I said, my voice steady. "The family that chooses to stand with you, not the ones who push you away." The guests cheered. Glasses clinked. And in that moment, I knew my parents had lost. But what I didn't know was that this was only the beginning. My revenge was about to take a turn so sharp, so devastating, that my parents would never recover from it. The Monday after my Thanksgiving celebration, the photos began circulating. At first, I uploaded just a few, me and Amelia laughing over champagne, the golden roast turkey shining in the candlelight, the packed hall filled with smiling faces. But my guests, thrilled by the night's success, shared their own photos and videos too. Within hours, social media was flooded with images of my Thanksgiving. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. My parents had hosted their quiet, carefully curated dinner with maybe a dozen people. I had hosted an event that looked like a royal banquet. And soon enough, the whispers started. "Did you see James' celebration? Incredible. He outdid Edward and Margaret this year, didn't he? I heard the food was catered by a Michelin chef. Margaret's turkey must have seemed dry after that." Every comment was like a dagger to their pride. My parents, who lived for admiration, were being overshadowed by the very son they had excluded. But that was just the surface. The real revenge began when people started asking questions. "Why wasn't James at your Thanksgiving? Didn't you invite him?" My parents tried to dodge the subject, mumbling excuses, but the truth was already seeping out. Amelia, bless her, wasn't shy about telling people. They told him to skip it. Can you believe that? By the end of the week, their pristine image as the perfect family was cracking. And I wasn't done yet. The following Saturday, I received an invitation to a charity gala in London, a gathering my parents had always attended with pride. This year, however, my name was on the list, not theirs. Apparently, the organizers had been so impressed by the scale and class of my Thanksgiving event that they wanted me as their guest of honor. I could almost imagine my parents' faces when they learned. Edward and Margaret Williams, once the golden couple of society, overlooked for their son. At the gala, I was surrounded by admirers. People congratulated me not only for my event but for the message behind it. Celebrating chosen family, creating warmth where others had been denied it. Every handshake, every compliment, was a silent slap to my parents. And then came the inevitable confrontation. I was sipping wine near the grand staircase when I spotted them, my parents, stiff in their formal attire, walking toward me. My mother's smile was tight, my father's jaw clenched. "James," she said sweetly, though her eyes blazed. "A word?" I followed them to a quieter corner. My father wasted no time. "You've humiliated us," he said coldly. "Humiliated you?" I raised an eyebrow. "All I did was celebrate Thanksgiving. Or is it humiliating because I proved I could do it better than you?" "You went behind our backs," my mother snapped. "Inviting family, friends. People we specifically asked not to burden this year. Burden? I scoffed. So that's what family is to you, a burden? No wonder you told me to skip it. My father's voice hardened. This stops now, James. You've made your point. Don't push it further. I leaned closer, my voice low but cutting. Oh, I'm only just getting started. I walked away before they could respond, leaving them fuming in silence. The weeks that followed were deliciously satisfying. Invitations that once belonged to my parents began landing in my inbox instead. Dinners, galas, networking events. They all wanted the man who had hosted the most talked about Thanksgiving of the year. My parents, once the center of attention, were slowly being pushed to the sidelines. But it wasn't just about society anymore. The revenge was becoming personal. I decided to host another dinner, this time, a Christmas Eve feast. And once again, I invited everyone except my parents. Word spread quickly, and people were eager to attend. They loved the warmth, the joy, the inclusiveness of my gatherings, everything my parents' cold, rigid traditions lacked. On Christmas Eve, as snow dusted the London streets, my hall was filled with laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Children played near the tree, couples danced to soft carols, and the air smelled of roasted goose and mulled wine. I raised another toast, my words deliberate. To those who remind us that family isn't just blood. It's those who show up, who care, who make space for you, even when others don't. The applause was thunderous. And I knew, without a doubt, that news of my words would reach my parents by morning. But revenge has a way of spiraling. By New Year's, my parents were desperate. My mother called me late one night, her voice trembling, not with sadness but with fury. James, enough is enough. You're ruining us. Do you understand? People are starting to talk. They think we abandoned you. I smirked, even though she couldn't see it. Didn't you? It wasn't like that, she snapped. We just needed space. You needed space. I interrupted, my voice sharp. And in that space, I found a world that doesn't revolve around you. A world where I matter. A world that now sees me, not just Edward and Margaret's son. There was silence on the line. For once, my mother had no retort. And that's when the final piece of my revenge began forming in my mind. It wouldn't be enough to just outshine them socially. No, I wanted to strike at the very heart of what they valued most, their legacy. Because if they thought Thanksgiving was just about pushing me aside, they were about to learn it was the moment they pushed me into becoming their greatest rival. The next step wouldn't just hurt them socially. It would tear down the carefully built empire of reputation and control they had spent their lives protecting. And I knew exactly when to do it. At Easter. By the time spring rolled around, anticipation for my Easter feast was at an all-time high. People who barely knew me were sending requests to attend. Business owners offered sponsorships. Local newspapers wanted to cover the event. I had become something my parents never dreamed of. An icon of family gatherings, a symbol of warmth in cold society. But for this one, I had a secret plan. A revelation so sharp, so devastating, it would destroy the image my parents clung to. I started digging into old family matters, inheritances, trusts, and property deeds. And what I discovered made my blood run cold. My parents had always told me the Sussex estate, the house I grew up in, would someday be mine. But the legal documents I uncovered told another story. They had quietly transferred the estate into my cousin Amelia's name last year. Without telling me. Without even asking. They hadn't just excluded me from Thanksgiving. They had erased me from their future. And now, I had the perfect stage to reveal it. At the Easter feast, I would show everyone exactly who my parents really were. By the time Easter Sunday arrived, the air in London carried the crisp sweetness of spring. Tulips lined the streets, children chased one another with painted eggs, and church bells rang faintly in the distance. For me, however, Easter wasn't just about tradition. It was the moment I had been waiting for, the grand finale of my revenge. My Easter feast was the talk of the city. The hall I rented this time was even larger, decorated with cascading flowers, golden drapes, and tables groaning under the weight of roasted lamb, glazed hams, baskets of hot cross buns, and every dessert imaginable. A choir sang softly in the background, their harmonies filling the room with an almost divine atmosphere. Guests poured in, dressed in their finest, eager to be part of what had become the most anticipated holiday event of the year. People who once fawned over my parents now gravitated toward me, praising my generosity, my charm, my vision. I had become the Williams name in society, and they knew it. And yes, my parents were there. Oh, they hadn't been invited. But humiliation has a way of drawing people in. They couldn't resist showing up, dressed impeccably as always, trying to save face. Their eyes darted around the room as they realized nearly every guest was someone who once belonged firmly in their orbit, now orbiting me. It was perfect. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter and clinking glasses. I played the gracious host, weaving through tables, ensuring everyone was enjoying themselves. My parents sat stiffly at a corner table, ignored by most, their once commanding presence reduced to shadows. Finally, as dessert was served, I knew it was time. I stood at the center of the hall, raising my glass for a toast. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward me. Friends, family, and those who have become like family, I began, my voice steady. Tonight isn't just about Easter. It's about renewal, about truth, about choosing light over shadows. I paused, letting the words sink in. Then, with deliberate calm, I gestured to a large screen behind me. You see, holidays aren't just traditions. They're promises. Promises that family stands together, that we protect one another. But what happens when those promises are broken? When the people meant to stand by you are the ones who push you away? Gasps murmured through the crowd as the screen flickered to life. And then the documents appeared. The legal deeds. The property transfer. The signatures of Edward and Margaret Williams, my parents. This, I continued, my tone razor-sharp, is the Sussex estate. The home I was raised in. The home my parents promised would always remain in the family, passed down to me. But here's the truth. They transferred it in secret to my cousin Amelia. Gasps erupted. Heads turned toward Amelia, who sat at the front, wide-eyed and pale. I had warned her beforehand, so she wasn't blindsided, but the shock still rang real. And do you know why? I asked, my gaze locking on my parents. Because to them, I was disposable. First, they excluded me from Thanksgiving, telling me to skip, as if I were an afterthought. Then they erased me from their legacy, stripping away what was rightfully mine. They didn't just want space. They wanted me gone. The hall was silent. My parents sat frozen, their faces pale with fury and shame. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but loud enough for every ear to hear. But tonight proves something. I don't need their house. I don't need their approval. I don't even need their presence. Because I've built something stronger. A family of choice. A legacy of my own. And while they tried to silence me, they've only made me louder. The room erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, some even shouting my name. My parents? They shrank into their seats, their empire crumbling around them. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, whispers of the Easter revelation spread like wildfire. Articles appeared in local papers, painting me as the wronged son who rose above betrayal. My parents were condemned for deceit, their reputation shredded. Invitations they once received vanished. Clubs they once commanded closed their doors. Their carefully crafted image of perfection was destroyed. And me? I thrived. I was invited to speak at charity events, praised for my resilience. Business opportunities opened up. People wanted to work with the man who had turned betrayal into triumph. Amelia, freed from the guilt of the estate transfer, willingly signed the Sussex property back over to me, saying, "It was always yours, James." When I walked back into that old estate weeks later, the air felt different. Not haunted by my parents' control, but alive with possibility. As for Edward and Margaret, they became ghosts in their own world. Outcast, avoided, whispered about in tones of pity and disdain. They tried to reach out once, my mother sending a trembling letter, begging to make amends. But I didn't reply. They had wanted space. Now they had it, forever. The next Thanksgiving, I hosted again, this time in the Sussex estate. Hundreds came, filling the grand halls with music, laughter, and warmth. As I raised my glass that night, I smiled. Not with bitterness, but with power. To family, I declared once more. Not the ones who cast you aside, but the ones who lift you higher. And in that moment, surrounded by light, I realized my revenge was complete. Because my parents had wanted me gone. Instead, I had built a legacy so bright, it buried theirs in shadows forever.